Hey everyone, welcome to Simply Learn. Today, we will be learning the Project Management fill course. We will begin this video by talking about what project management is, project planning, how can it be done using Excel, cost, quality, communication and other forms of management, the best project managing tools, how you can prepare for the PMP exam, the role of a project manager, interview questions and much more. By the time we are done, you'll be well versed with some of the most important concepts in project management. For this training with me, we have our specialists Chandra MR and Ishan. Together, they will take you through these different topics. So, let's start by answering our first question. What is project management? So before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to hit that bell icon so that you can never miss an update from Simply Learn.
Hi, welcome to Project Management tutorial from Simply Learn. I am Chandra MR, a professional consultant and coach in best practices related to project management and IT service management. Today, as part of this tutorial, we are going to learn the basic understanding about the project management and the required knowledge for a project manager to become successful in managing projects. So as part of this tutorial, we are going to look at what is project management, what is project, components of project management, project life cycle, key focus areas in project management, job roles in project management, and project management certifications. So what is project management? Now, as defined in PMI's PMBOK, project management is application of knowledge, skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So every project will have an objective to accomplish. Similarly, the objective of project management is to make the final deliverables in a finite time and budget. This involves having clear understanding about the deliverables of the project, required resources for the project, resource in terms of human resources, technical resources, financial resources, etc. Project manager should have a full picture of those aspects. We can call it as constraints or aspects and manage those throughout the project life cycle, for which a project manager should have a full view about a project and what is that this project has to accomplish. That objective should be clear. So as part of project management, the 6 constraints which project managers should look at are scope, time, quality, cost, risk and resources. So each of these areas has very important role to play in project management. The clarity in scope, the clarity in terms of schedule within which the project has to be delivered, the cost, what it incurs to that particular project. Once it is finalized, one cannot vary, one cannot change without any proper approvals. Similar to that, we have quality management, which has to ensure the scope, the specifications, what are defined, project output will be accordingly achieved. Risk, every project is taken up for a specific reason by organization. So organization should assess the risk associated with the project, and similarly as project progresses, various different risks has to be identified, like risk related to project management, risk related to technology area, risk related to resources, risk related to financial things. So broadly, risk management plays a very important role. So there will be something called contingency reserve kept for a identified risk above the cost what is estimated for various deliverables from the project. So every project require resources. Resources may be in terms of human resources, financial resources, technology resources, environmental resources. So all these resources are used to produce the output of the project. So these resources has to be managed with the sufficient optimization and standardizations required. Now let us understand the definition of a project. So what is a project? PMI defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service or result. The temporary nature of a project indicates that a project has a definite beginning and end. So when I say product, unique product, it means every output, it may be similar products you are producing with the same features and functionality, but the output of every project is unique because it is unique in terms of all the 6 constraints what we just discussed now. Now when I say product, it is very easy for us to visualize. It may be a desktop, it may be a laptop, It may be a car, it may be a machine, etc. But how do I visualize a service? Now, project's output is a service. Now, it's about building a capability. A project, through a project, a capability can be built to ensure services can be provided. That's what the output of project is, service. For example, if I think about a taxi services, for providing a taxi services, I need a mobile app, I need taxi, I need a server, I need a data center. So all these are various different products and services. Here service example can be internet service. So combination of all these services and products builds the capability for an organizations who can provide the taxi services. So building that capability, we say it is an output of a particular project which is called service. Similarly, results can be improvement of something, improvement in customer satisfaction, increase in some specific objectives or specific results needs to be achieved in performance perspective. So output of every project will be unique product or a service or a result. This we need to clearly understand. So when we say there is a definite beginning and end, every project starts at a certain point in time and ends at certain point in time. So it has a definite beginning and end. That is the reason it is temporary in nature. It is not an ongoing business activity, right? So every project will have a life cycle, a beginning and end. So when it starts till end, until the result or a service or a product which comes as an output of a project life cycle is not ended. So interestingly, in a product life cycle or in a service life cycle, you come across many project life cycles. So one project life cycle means one project is initiated to introduce a product or services. Next project or initiated would be to enhance the capability of a service or a product. Next project initiated after some time is to optimize something. Similarly, at the end of the product life cycle, project is initiated to retire that product or services. So in a given product life cycle, there may be multiple project life cycle. So what is involved in the project life cycle? It involves 5 areas, 5 groups we can call it as. So initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and closure. So when I say initiation, it's all about understanding what is project, giving the basic understanding of the project, collating the details and having key stakeholders identified. Once that is done, one will move towards planning. So here in the initiation, it is very clearly one has to understand is project is worthwhile of doing. So one has to check the feasibility, one has to measure that particular investment is making sense and then confirm, yes, it makes sense to invest. Now next, planning. As we have a basic understanding of, yes, this project has to be done, and a discussion with the key stakeholders have happened. Now that moves towards planning. Now in planning, one will understand the project in entirety. If it is a waterfall approach, one has to have a clear articulation of entire project, a comprehensive details, holistic approach. Now if you are going in a project in an agile way of approach, now in this planning you may have a big skeleton. As you go in each of the iteration, you may go deep dive into detailed planning if it is an agile approach. So planning provides you the clear insight towards what needs to be done in this project, how it has to be done, and what are the results which can be achieved out of that particular project. So this involves making that a clear blueprint of an project objectives, what we are supposed to achieve. So this will become a reference point throughout the project life cycle. Then execution. As you have a blueprint of the project, as the direction of that project is set, detailing of the project has been made, one will go ahead and execute the project. Execute in the sense implementation, acquiring resources and implementing it. So execution phase involves the allocation of resources and making the deliverables as required. You acquire resources, you configure a resource, you ensure right resources are acquired. If it is human resource, one has to educate that human resource with the project required knowledge or details, or one has to provide that assignment in such a way that skills of that individuals, what they should have is acquired by those individuals so that deliverables can happen, and they needs to be managed. The entire team needs to be managed. For that, a clear structure has to be created. Similarly, when you do technology resource perspective, those components has to be tested, configured, then integrated, again tested for and check the performances. So collective action of this results in a deliverable during the execution. So as the deliverables are happening in the execution, it is quite obvious project manager has to monitor, review, control that particular deliverable, and also the processes, tools, resources used during the project, even those needs to be monitored so that they are complying to the defined processes. So during monitoring, there may be a deviation one can found. During monitoring, there may be the project is running the way it is required. So in this monitoring phase, it involves an action from project manager to monitor and control the work of the project. So comparing with the blueprint of plan, what is accomplished, what is created during the planning phase of this project, and as the execution happens, monitoring and control is monitoring it and checking is that activities what is being done is according to the plan or not. Similarly, the deliverables which comes as an output of a project are tested thoroughly, whether those have a specific features and functionality and are they functioning the way it is required. Now project has to be delivered to the scope what is defined. It should not go beyond that or below that. Similarly, the schedule what is made for the project, within that schedule project deliverables needs to be accomplished within the cost what is budgeted for the project. So during the project, project manager may find there are certain deviations which are occurred, there are additional challenges which has come in. So for this reason, one has to ensure continued monitoring as the execution happens and identify those deviation and ensure whenever there is a deviation there is a correction. Whenever there is an additional things coming in, that needs to be considered carefully whether that need to be involved as part of this deliverable or should be taken it separately. So this requires a lot of conversation with all the stakeholders of the project during the entire project life cycle, especially during planning, execution, monitoring and control, since they are not the one which is happening in sequence. So planning can also come back again where there is something which you may require to modify. So you may require to have a change in the blueprint itself by adding that new change which is coming in. So you go back to planning. So planning, execution, monitoring and control are going hand in hand so that project deliverables are happening as needed. Similarly, all the process, work instructions, all those templates what is given are used. One is complying to those requirement. It is very important. And project is done within the scope, schedule and time and the quality metrics defined. Then as the completion of the project happens, as the monitoring and control says, yes, deliverable has happened according to the requirement, then the project moves to the closure. The closure may be closure of a specific project phase, a milestone deliverable or a phasal deliverable, or it can be a deliverable at the end of the project, which is the ultimate deliverable. So processes in closing has to be triggered whenever there is an end of the phase, whenever there is a deliverable to conclude, and also at the end of the project to conclude the entire project. So during the closure, one has to ensure capturing all the details in terms of what is accomplished against what is defined, what went wrong, what went well, what is the learning one has to take to the next level or to the next phase or to the next project. And at the same time, a sign off has to be obtained formally and everything should be summarized and have a good handshake with the project stakeholder, mainly a business or customer. And also disseminating of team means you will dismantle the entire team and send them back to their specific units or specialization, and they may get assigned to new project, or if it is a functional, they can go back to their functions to do their functional activities. So that was about entire project life cycle, what happens. Now while doing this, I mentioned there are 6 constraints, that is scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk and resources. So keeping these in mind, one has to ensure project is successful in all aspects. So to become successful, there are few key areas which has to be looked at. So first 6 key areas are scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources and stakeholders. Now let us look at the scope. What does scope means? Scope is about what needs to be delivered. What is in scope? What is out of the scope? So this refers to all those deliverable scope, all those activity scope. Basically we speak about 2 things. One is product scope and project scope. Product scope is all about ensuring the features, functionality of products are well defined and understood and signed off. And while delivering that product, that is tested against those defined features and functionalities. Whereas project scope focus on all the activities needs to be done, all those templates which has to be used, all the process which has to be complied with, all that skills which is required to be applied. So it is going as defined. So by doing this activities which is defined as part of project scope, the result, the deliverable will come out, which will be in line with the deliverables, features and functionality, which is defined as part of product scope. It is very important to ensure entire projects happens within this particular scope. There should not be any deviations from this. Schedule perspective, for that specifications what we have defined for a product and project. So these needs to be done in a specific point in time, means in a specific schedule. There will be start time, end time, right? So one has to plan how long a project would take and what are the deliverables should happen in what sequence, what activities are required to accomplish this. So all these needs to be understood. So while performing the schedule management, one has to look at a specific deliverable at a specific point in time by applying a specific set of activities required. So this will tell you the duration of the project. This will provide you the sequence of project. This will also help you to understand the dependency between one task to another task. This will also help you to understand how the deliverables happening in what sequence, which helps in prioritizing your deliverables. Third is cost. So as we know, to do any project, it is very essential to ensure project happens within that budget. So project cost is estimated initially, then that estimated cost will be checked in terms of is the assumptions, considerations are right or wrong, is that really so much of monetary resources are required for the project, and then after understanding the justification and obtaining the clarity, budget is, monetary resources are allocated and confirmed, approved, then it will become a budget. That will be a cost baseline. So these estimation, allocation of budget, once it happens, that will become a base, and any deviations from that cannot happen so easily. So any deviations because of additional of scope, that can be handled through change management, but idealistic scenario, the cost should not escalate or come down. Organization can also set certain tolerances at the project level, considering various different scenarios, like scenario of risks, scenario of something which deviated from the deliverable. So to what extent it can deviate, that tolerance will also be set at the economic or monetary value perspective. That is about cost. Now quality, as we know, quality is a very important area which ensures the project is delivered in time with all the specifications defined by using all the methods, means by following all the processes, work instructions, templates, and delivering as needed, where it enables the project to monitor it easily. So basically the requirement of compliance and standardization and optimization is to ensure everyone follows the same steps to do the activity. So what quality management focus is to ensure the intended objectives of a project are achieved. Already there is a definition done in terms of various different practices or processes needs to be followed. Similarly, specification of each of the products are defined, and from that there should not be any deviation. So quality management should focus on ensuring those activities are done as defined, those deliverables are done according to the specifications what is defined. It is very important that way. So for that there is a layer of quality management. There should be a layer of quality management where auditing or control activities are initiated periodically so that any deviations can be seen easily. And remember, a project manager cannot become part of quality management. Like project manager cannot audit. Project manager should have a team or take the help of a team who can able to do. Mostly the one who is not part of the project is always better. Resources. Now as I mentioned earlier, every project needs resources. It may be human resources, it may be technology resources, it may be any other resources which are required to do the project. So organization acquires resources, configured and then deployed. For example, in a project, you acquire a server, you configure a server, you deploy a server. Technology resource. Human resource is onboarded, recruited, project induction is given. Then at the same time, the skills and capabilities of individuals are according to the requirement of project. That needs to be ensured. And what needs to be delivered and how it has to be delivered should be clear to the particular human resource. So looking at all the aspects of resources to acquire, to build and manage, it is very important to look at the resource management. So this will help in carrying out a specific task in a project in a best possible manner. So interestingly, when I say human resource, always there is a possibility that a conflict can occur. So when I say conflict of interest maybe in terms of what that individuals has to do, conflict in terms of the preferences, in terms of solutions, what they're looking at, conflict in terms of using resources, different opinions, different preferences, various reasons conflict can come across. So it is very important to project manager to understand this dynamics of human resources and manage those conflicts. Project manager cannot shy away from handling conflicts. Project manager has to hone and resolve those conflicts in the favor of project, not in the favor of any individuals. So there are various techniques to look at resolving conflicts. So that is like compromising, problem solving, smoothing, accommodating. So whichever helps for that project scenario, for the project objectives. That needs to be applied. That technique has to be taken up. So here the resolution is not at the specific individual's preference. It is with the objective of whether projects has any impact. What kind of impact? Positive or negative? If it is negative, no, that's not the direction. The direction should be ensuring project gets that value through this conflict resolution. So project manager should own it. It's an accountability of a project manager. Then as the human resources are acquired, there are 5 stages. Team dynamics are involved. So one has to bring them, then educate them about a project. As the education on the project happens, one has to go and do the job on floor. That needs to be observed. Means one has to manage by looking at it, and any corrections needs to be done. That needs to be guided. So it is very dynamic thing when it comes to human resources. Similarly, in technology resources, standardization. There is no ambiguity as such, but right resources with the right configurations should be acquired. That is very important. The next, stakeholders. So who can be stakeholders? Every project will have a stakeholder who are internal and external to the project. So the internal stakeholders are those who are part of the project, who are part of the organization, who are part of the customer organization, or part of supplier organization, a computation to my business, means my organization's business. All this we can call it as a stakeholders. Now every stakeholders will have a specific interest, a power, an ability to influence. Now through their position, through their distance from the project, they will get impacted. At the same time, they will also impact the project. Similarly, they influence and they get influenced because of the project. So a project manager should identify all the stakeholders and understand this. What is the kind of stakeholder is this in terms of power, in terms of legitimacy, in terms of influence, in terms of impact. After understanding that, there should be a strategy for handling the stakeholders. How am I going to engage with these stakeholders? It is very important. And accordingly, the engagement should happen, and then stakeholder engagement should resolve in the favor of projects again. So if it is a customer should get the inputs required through review or periodic updates and the engagement required with the customer, so that customer is having up-to-date information about the project. If it is a team, continued monitoring and control and ensuring team delivers the results what is required. So focus of a stakeholder should be in such a way that your strategy should enable project to become successful and get a proper response from the stakeholder, means a supporting engagement. So next few key focus areas to mention is communication, risk, procurement, critical success factors, deliverables, and work breakdown. So this list is not exhaustive. As we deep dive into project, I think you can just keep listing the key focus areas more than this, but whatever we have indicated are the minimum which needs to be looked at. So when I say communication is basically a conversation, exchange of message which happens between two entities. Now whenever we communicate, it is necessary to understand that it has to happen with two individuals or two entities. There should be a sender, there should be a receiver. In the absence of receiver, if sending is happening, that communication doesn't make any sense. There should be a receiver and there should be an acknowledgement from the receiver. Now this is one of the most ignored area in many of the projects. Even the communication happens more often, more frequently. But what people face difficulty in realizing that as they communicate generally, informally, formally, they just take those for granted. Now when you identify the stakeholder, one has to understand what is the communication requirement for those stakeholders. What is that communication? Why is that communication? What is the content of that communication? How frequently we should do that interactions or communications? Intent of that particular communication. What is the expected action or response from that communication? All this needs to be very, very clear, and this can be articulated. It has to be articulated. So when it is articulated, once there is a picture in terms of what kind of communication has to happen, it is quite obvious there should not be any deviation from the agreed communications requirements. And whenever there is a need of change to the communication requirements from the stakeholders, that needs to be updated. For this, one has to have a stakeholders identified. So stakeholder management and communication are very closely linked and associated. Engagement with the stakeholder will become successful with an effective communication approaches. Next is risk. So every project which is undertaken by organization, that will have certain amount of risk which organization will evaluate. Similarly, within the project life cycle, lot of risk comes up which would have certain impact to the project. Now risk refers to, by definition, an uncertain event. It has an uncertainty. An event which is uncertain, and when it occurs, it will have an impact on the project positively or negatively. Now, current scenario in everywhere the projects, what you observe closely, people tend to look at the risk which are threats, that is negative only, but they fail to recognize the risks which are opportunities, the positive risks. So another gap which we see when do the risk management is that is done in the initial phase of the project. As the project is kicked off, someone will do the risk assessment, have a list of risk identified, but unfortunately there is no categorizations for that risk, and how is that going to impact the project, that is not clear. Thirdly, risk management or list of risk are created only once. It is not done repeatedly. So risk identification and analysis and assessment of that risk has to be done throughout the life cycle of a project. Reason being, the risk which looks as an high impact when project is initiated, as the project progresses, the impact levels will vary. Maybe in the mid of the project, the impact may be very high or low. So likewise, the impacts of the risk will vary throughout the project life cycle. It may be positive, it may be negative. So as you identify the stakeholder throughout the project life cycle, as I said, that is also a dynamic. I cannot just have a list of stakeholders and I keep it as it is. I need to update that also regularly. Risk identification, assessment and analysis should also be done regularly, periodically, so that one will have a clear understanding about, is that risk still valid? Is that risk is there still or not? What is the level of variations in terms of impact of the risks? So this clarity will be there so that organization or project manager can get ready to face those risks. If it is a negative risk, definitely you should have a mitigation or avoidance or acceptance, whatever the mitigation plan you have, to eliminate the negative impact of the risk when it occurs. If it is a positive risk, it's quite obvious one has to take the advantage of that. One has to enhance, exploit, share a positive risk so that organization is benefited. Further, procurement. So whenever a project is initiated, whenever a project is taken up, the organization who is doing the project cannot create everything, cannot develop everything in that project life cycle. So organization would take a decision, make a decision stating that some of the deliverables we make ourselves, some of the products we make ourselves, some of the products we purchase, some of the services we purchase. So to purchase, that has to happen from a specific supplier. You cannot go with every supplier. You should evaluate those suppliers, qualify the suppliers, and then select, onboard the supplier, and then get the services or products supplied by that particular supplier. So while doing this, one has to understand what type of contracting they need to enter with. So three types of contracts we speak basically. One is about cost plus contract, where cost is fully known to the project manager and to the organization. So apart from known cost, a fee will be paid to the supplier. Another one is fixed price, where project manager or the organization who is awarding that contract to a supplier will not know what is the cost. Instead, it is a fixed price. But important here is the scope of work needs to be clearly articulated and defined. Another type of contracting can be time and material, where the billing will happen based on the amount of time one is spent on that particular hire a resource or onboard a resource on a time and material basis, and what is that effort that resource has been put. Based on that, billing will happen. So three types of contracts depending on the different scenarios of the project will be signed with the contractor. However, before doing that, it is very essential to identify those suppliers, sign off with them, and monitor and manage them. So if deliverables are not there, it is very essential to look at the termination. One has to terminate. Otherwise, one has to ensure, instead of terminating, should be able to put some effort to educate them also, so that they come up to the mark, so project is benefited. So depending on what needs to be done, that call has to be taken on a regular basis. Then critical success factor. So for every project, there should be an articulation of critical success factor. So based on that, one can confirm, yes, project has achieved its objectives or project has not achieved its objectives. So critical success factor should be supported through the metrics, key performance indicators. So key performance indicators provide those metrics to say critical success factor is achieved. For example, if I want to become successful in an exam, critical success factor is scoring or passing the examination. Or let me say, to pass the examination, key performance indicator is scoring 60% and above. So critical success factor for me to get promoted is to pass in this particular exam. So to pass in this exam, minimum I should score is 60%. that is KPI, passing in the exam, that is critical success factor. So how will I measure that success factor is KPI. So every project which it produces a specific product or services by using a specific resources, and each of these, the resources, the processes, the templates, the deliverables, all these needs to be measured on a continual basis. So there are critical success factors defined, and those are measured by defining KPIs to that critical success factors. So basically, critical success factor provides the insight towards what needs to be measured, and when you measure, what should be the focus. And to achieve those critical success factors, the indicator is key performance indicators. When you measure, yes, the moment you achieve that, your CSF is achieved. Next, deliverables. So deliverables are those which comes as an output of the project, right? It may be a product, it may be a service, it may be a result. So this refers to the output within the scope of a project. So there can be one or more deliverables within a single project. So these deliverables may be the items that are to be sent externally to a customer or a stakeholder. So every deliverable will have a defined scope, will have a defined specification. So those deliverables has to be measured, tested, and one has to confirm, yes, this deliverable is performing as we are intended to have the performance. Accordingly, the decision will happen. Should we accept this particular deliverable or not? If there is any deviation, that has to go back for correction. So that's the reason we have monitoring and control. All the control processes like control quality focused on the product state, whether it has achieved that results or not. Is that functional as needed or not? One has to ensure these deliverables has all those features and functionalities. Only then that can be handed over to the respective stakeholder, customer or operation, whoever the stakeholder it is. Next is work breakdown structure. So when we say work breakdown structure, when I look at a specific piece of product or services and have a bigger picture, I cannot even visualize the various different components, various different actions involved in achieving that bigger deliverable. So if I say a car, so I can think of a body external, I can think of a mirror on that body, I can think of a glass in the front, side as well as the back side, and also I can think of interiors like seat, then accelerator, steering, dashboard. All this I can visualize. But since I'm not a technology expert relating to car, can I visualize all those parts which are working inside for car to move, like engine, the battery assembly? I don't know what to say further. So all these can be visualized by an expert. So every product or services should be broken down into multiple pieces. I'm not saying go and break that product. I'm saying that product will have multiple components which are involved. Those needs to be segregated. For example, if I say cars exteriors, cars interior. So cars exteriors, external items you can see, whatever you visualize, body structure, mirror assembly, headlights, then tires. So likewise, whatever I can visualize, I will make it as a line items under the exterior. So under, for example, under a mirror I can speak about mirror glass, mirror cap, mirror pedestal, and mirror assembly where it moves, where you can move the mirror. So these are the various components involved in a mirror. So I need to ensure by breaking down the product into multiple levels, by decomposing it to multiple levels, I can able to visualize the product very clearly. What is there in detail. So once I have the details, I will articulate those. What is that particular work breakdown element is, product breakdown element is. Then I will look at what skills and capabilities required for that product, and I will assign the resources accordingly. So once activities, resources, everything is assigned, automatically this will become a work breakdown structure. Further, after creating a work breakdown structure, one will go and sequence the activity, look at sequencing will happen based on in what priority deliverable should happen, what order deliverable should happen. Then once the sequencing is done, it will be checked to see whether anything can be optimized, anything can be done in such a way that smooth flow of the project can happen. There is no dependencies which will make project to delay. Like as the flow happens smoothly, so you would find the various techniques like critical path method, network diagramming, critical chain method. So all these are used. The floats of an activities are checked. Then leads and lags of the activities, the relationship between the activities. So accordingly, full visualization in terms of how the project will flow and how in what order the deliverables are happening can be easily visualized. So that is the reason first activity is to do the product breakdown, which would result in work breakdown structure. So those are the points till now whatever I mentioned are the basic understanding one should have about a project and project management. So as you deep dive into various best practices like PMP by PMI, Prince 2 by Axelos, Scrum Master, Agile Scrum Master. Similarly, you have Certified Scrum Master. So many agile practices. So when you look at any of the best practices, that will tell you clearly articulate what should be the practice for you to adopt and adapt that practices so that your project can become successful. So any of those approach you touch upon, all those refers to these basic things. In the absence of these basic things, none of those best practices discusses the project management. Now typically in the industry, there are a lot of job roles to the project management which we have seen. So based on that, this information is captured here on various job roles in a project management. So some of them are like project manager, senior project manager, project lead, resource manager, PMO, that is project management office analyst, steering committee member. So not necessarily all the project management roles are limited to this. So these are the roles which commonly you see, and we are trying to capture that to give the insight, right? When I say project manager, the project manager is the owner. One has to take an accountability for the project, right? So project managers takes the project according to the plan and plays a lead role in all the steps of the project management, right? So responsibilities would be managing, reviewing, and prioritizing the task wherever necessary, looking after risk management, stakeholder management, and project communication management. Some of the salary what we found while we were doing the survey, the success ratio of a project depends majorly on the project manager. So the demand for project managers is rapidly increasing in the market. So accordingly, 75,474 per year, that is the USD. In INR, it is 1500,000. So this is what the salary on an approximation what was found. Next role, we look at senior project manager, where senior project manager is the head of the overall project management plan. The role demands in-depth knowledge of all the project aspects on the specifics of the project. The responsibilities would be planning and coordinating complex projects, visiting project sites to check progress and handle complex issues. So salary looks like $104,000 per year, 92,000 INR per year. So the role of senior project manager is one of the highest paying roles in the industry, as we have seen, having several allowances and bonuses because of the criticality involved in that project and the accountability level of that particular individuals in the organization. Next role, project lead. So project leads are the one who leads the people throughout the project and provide them with all the information required throughout. So responsibilities involve motivating the team beneath taking care of their needs and paying attention to what they feel, ordering or controlling the project team since the project lead has more freedom than the project manager. Salary, project lead makes sure that project gives the best possible outcome and is hence the demand for the project lead in a company never reduces. So in USD, 82,000 per year, whereas in INR it is 1,269,000 per year. Next role we can look at on resource manager. So resource manager is the human resource needed to make the project success, right? So one has to manage those resources. Responsibility involved assigning the right people to the right projects at the right time, managing employees currently, and determining hiring needs depending on the project's requirements. So salary would be around 64,000 USD, which comes around 966,794 in INR. Project Management Office Analyst. For this role, the Project Management Office Analyst works with PMO, means Project Management Office, and does not look at the project or manage the project directly. Instead, does most of the data-driven work which required for a project to get supported by that, so that project managers will have better insight. Analyzing and interpreting the data concerning the project, figuring out the future risks to the project, finding new ways to advance the idea of the project management. So salary would be 106,253 per year in USD, whereas 449,337 in INR per year. So steering committee member. So the steering committee members are the members who do not work on the project themselves. They are there to help the project manager, like providing inputs during the development of a project, advising on the budget and evaluating the project strategies, taking regular feedbacks from the project managers and asking necessary questions. So salary would be around $68,497 per year. So those were the various roles, and that list is not an exhaustive list. Various different roles we come across, but these are the basic roles which is seen in the industry. These roles are being recruited. Now there are various project management certifications which are offered, as I mentioned earlier. So those certifications are PMP, that is Project Management Professional from PMI, Agile Certified Practitioner, that is PMI ACP, again from PMI, then Certified Associate in Project Management. So difference between CAPM and PMP is like CAPM would act as a basic level of certification for those who does not have a sufficient project experience, project management experience, whereas PMP is for those who has some project management experience. Similarly, PMI ACP is the one who is aspiring to look at agility in project management, and they can go for it. Certified Scrum Master, yes, it is a Scrum Master certificate which will explain the role of a Scrum Master in detail. Similarly, Prince2, a certification from Axelos, which also speak about all the aspects of the project what we discussed and provides the framework for project management. Axelos also provides Prince2 certification in Agile also, Agile Prince2 certification. So we will look at each one of this, certain details which are required for us to know. So project management professional, as I mentioned, is most acknowledged and value, the certificate value what it carries, which has resulted to the certified professionals in landing up in highest paid jobs in the world. So certified managers gets 20% more salary than the average salary. So to take up an examination, one has to go through the formal training of 35 hours. That is one of the prerequisites, and there should be some experience of 4500 hours of project managing project by leading various activities of a project. And once the person becomes eligible with that prerequisites, person will become register in the PMI's website, becomes member, and then go for examination. So examination fee for PMP would be $405 for the members who are registered with PMI, and for those who are not registered as a member with PMI, it is $555. The duration of the examination is 4 hours, and the number of questions will be 200, which are multiple choice questions. So each question carries 1 mark. There is no negative scoring. Now prerequisites, one has to have 4,500 hours directing and leading the projects. That experience has to be filled in while filling the application. If a person is a bachelor degree holder, and along with that 35 contact hours of PM education. Now prerequisites for the one who is not a graduate, who may be high school or diploma, is 7,500 hours of directing and leading projects, 35 hours of PM education. So those are the prerequisites before one will go and appear for examination. So once an individual passes PMP examination, that certificate is valid for 3 years. So now after 3 years, if the person aspires to keep the certificate continued, they need to produce 60 PDUs, professional development units, which has to be acquired during those 3 years. How to acquire? One has to go through additional learning, one has to contribute towards project management knowledge base. So those needs to be evidenced, and then renewal fee has to be paid and certificate has to be renewed. Then Agile Certified Practitioner, as we saw for PMP, here Agile Certified Practitioner demonstrates that one has relevant experience and education to handle and lead Agile projects. The organization has started shifting towards Agile, as we know in today's industry, which makes this certification fast growing in the world. So examination fee would be $435 for PMI members, $495 for non-PMI members. Duration is 3 hours and multiple choice questions, 120 questions. Prerequisites is 2,000 hours project management experience with 1,500 hours agile experience and 21 contact hours of agile practices. So maintenance, 30 PDOs are required for every 3 years, and after paying the renewal fee, that can be renewed. Now certified associate in project management. So here this is an entry level certificate of PMI, especially for those people who has less project experience. It intends to demonstrate fundamental knowledge, terminologies and processes of effective project management. So examination fee would be $225 for PMI members, whereas $300 for non-members of PMI. So duration of examination is 3 hours, and examination will have 150 multiple choice questions. So prerequisites, someone who has secondary diploma with 23 contact hours of PM education is enough. There is no experience of doing the project is required, as we saw in PMP. So maintenance is again 3 years. Someone who need to continue the certification has to retake the examination every 3 years. Next, certified Scrum Master. So Certified Scrum Master is an entry-level certification that helps the professionals to begin as the Scrum practitioners. It is one of the most sought after certifications after this one can get the designation of Certified Scrum Master, which is offered by Scrum Alliance. So examination fee, which will change time to time, which is not revealed. So one has to approach the training organization where they will get trained on Certified Scrum Master. So duration of examination is 60 minutes and pattern would be 16 hours, 2 days of training and 50 multiple choice questions after that particular 2 days of training. Then prerequisite is done for maintaining these credentials. So one has to ensure it is renewed every 2 years. Then projects in controlled environment, that is Prince2. So Prince2 is a method which is effective mostly from the base of UK. All the organizations who are from UK region prefers to have Prince2 certification, and it is as popular as any other project management certifications like PMP. So examination fee would vary from $900 to $1,000 depending on where exactly you're taking the examination, and certification will happen at 2 levels. One is at foundation level and other one is practitioner. So in foundation, it is 60 questions, multiple choice, and in practitioner, it is 68 questions. Now, 60 questions or 68 questions, each carries 1 marks for correct answer. Any wrong answer, there will not be any negative scoring. One has to score 55% to clear the examination. So prerequisites for Prince2 Foundation is none, whereas Prince2 Foundation is a prerequisite for Prince2 practitioner examination. So to maintain the certificate, one has to achieve 20 CPDs every year, continued professional development.
Hi guys, my name is Ishan and I welcome you all to this session of project planning. Today, we will be learning about different aspects of project planning. But before we begin, let's have a look at an incident. Here's Max, an assistant project manager who looks tensed and is pacing around the room. Then Jack, a project manager who works with him, walks into the room and asks him, why does he seem so tensed? To which Max replies he's facing difficulty in estimating the budget. Jack responds, it might be because he's not planning the project properly. Jack reassures Max and begins to tell him about project planning. So today, we will be learning about what is project planning and check out the fundamentals of project planning. Then we will see why project planning is so essential for a project to be successful. After that, we will check the tools for project planning, and finally, we will have a look at the steps for project planning. So without any further ado, let's begin with what is project planning. Project planning is the second step or phase of the project life cycle. Project life cycle has 5 different phases from initiation to closure. Today, we will be learning about this phase that comes immediately after initiation, in which the project plan is documented and further requirements are defined. Project planning includes the following things. The first and the foremost thing is describing the objectives or outputs we are expecting the project to yield. Second, we have is the elaboration of the scope to make sure what the project is all about and what all can be expected from the project. The third step we have is forming a schedule. This schedule is important to run or perform different tasks of a project, each task having its own start date and end date. This helps the project to finish in the scheduled time and limit. Lastly, we have making and generating progress reports, in which all that went during the tenure of the project is documented. This helps in evaluating the project and helps in the forthcoming projects. Now, let's have a look at the project planning fundamentals. The first fundamental that we have is the determination of scope, cost, and resources. The determination helps us in having a rough estimate about the time that is required to finish the project. It helps us in determining the number of people required and what should be their skill set. We can divide the project into smaller manageable sections, and this is made possible with the help of work breakdown structure. The second fundamental refers to identifying the problem. There are several techniques by which we can collect information and discover issues. There may be several problems in a project, and in that case, several risks or issues are prioritized, and the risk that requires immediate attention is dealt with first. Then comes identification of stakeholders. When we can identify the stakeholders, we can know who all will be affected and in what way, which helps us having a better understanding of the project. Stakeholders may be anybody. They may be the part of the project team, or project managers, or customers. They help during the project and contribute to its success. Then the last fundamental we will discuss is defining project objectives. A project plan is made keeping in mind the requirements of the project team and expectations of the stakeholders. If the project team can meet the expectations of the stakeholders, then only we can say that the project is successful. Now, when we know about project planning and its fundamentals, it's time to see why project planning is so important. Project planning reduces the cost and time of the project as every step is monitored and optimized in the best possible manner. Project planning increases employee satisfaction as every employee who is a part is engaged in the team for improved project performance. Project planning helps in the implementation of quality assurance as the output of every step is duly tested. Lastly, project planning helps in reducing project risk as planning helps to analyze, prioritize, and deal with that risk. Moving on, let's have a look at the tools for project planning. The first tool that we have is a Gantt chart. Today, Gantt charts are one of the most popular project management tools. They help in tracking the status of the work at a particular time and their dependencies on each other. Gantt charts help in showing different phases and steps involved in a project. The second tool we will talk about is Critical Path Method or CPM. Critical Path Method helps in scheduling the project activities so that the project runs properly. The Critical Path Method focuses on the longest stretch of dependent tasks and determines the time needed to complete them. The next tool is Project Evaluation and Review Technique or PERT chart. PERT provides a graphical representation of the project's timeline, explaining the interdependencies of different tasks. This tool not only helps in making a schedule, but also helps in coordinating with all the team members. The fourth tool we will check is Work Breakdown Structure. Work Breakdown Structure is a very common tool that makes it possible for the team to break its work into manageable sections. Work Breakdown Structure is a step-to-step process that helps in completing the project efficiently. The last tool we will see is Project Documentation. Project documentation is an integral part of the project lifecycle. Project documentation helps in understanding the mistakes done during the project and, more importantly, provides guidelines for the upcoming project. Now, when we know about different tools for project planning, it becomes essential that we know the necessary steps of project planning. There are 7 steps in project planning. Let's have a look at each of them in detail. The first step is identification of stakeholders. As we have discussed, stakeholders could be anybody. They could be a part of the team or a project manager or a customer. When we identify stakeholders, we can find out the expectations and requirements that are to be looked upon in this project. This gives us a clearer picture of the project and helps in establishing the project scope. So the next step we have is defining the project scope. This helps in determining a list of specific project goals and deliverables that are to be achieved during the course of the project. After we have defined the project scope, it is time to set project objectives and prioritize them. The initial ideas that were there before are now elaborated, and final steps to complete the project are defined. In the next step, the deliverables are determined. After all, project deliverables are the only reason why the project is being created. This step involves finding out what these deliverables will be and the deadlines of their delivery. Then the step that comes into picture is creating a project schedule. The project schedule refers to the guidelines when a particular task is to be started and when it is supposed to end. This helps in monitoring the growth of the project and later helps in generating progress reports. The next step is the step of risk analysis. This step plays an extremely important role in the success of the overall project. It helps in identifying the risk, prioritizing them, and taking steps to limit them. The last step in project planning is to generate progress reports. In this step, we update the stakeholders about the project growth, and it is done so that all the concerned team members can have a look at the progress of the project. After all this information, Max thanks Jack for the explanation and looks forward to plan projects within the budget and of better quality. In this session, we will talk about project plan in Excel. We will learn about a project plan and how we can make an effective plan in Microsoft Excel. Before we begin, let's have a look at all the topics we will be covering today. First, we will see the basics of a project plan. Then, we will check the process of project management in Microsoft Excel and why should one refer to Microsoft Excel. Apart from this, we will learn about how to make a Gantt chart in Excel. Towards the end, we will check some Microsoft Excel templates. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let's see what is a project plan. Project plan is a basic thing that is needed to execute a project. According to Project Management Book of Knowledge, a project can be defined as an approved, elaborative document that guides the team during project execution and project control. When we are making a project plan must answer several questions for us. These questions are like, what are we expecting our project to deliver? How are we expecting to get our deliverables within the desired time? Who all will be a part of our project and what tasks they will have in the project? When will the project start and when it is expected to end? That is, the deadlines of the project. Now, let us learn about project management in Excel. Microsoft Excel is one of the most common applications these days. It is used in both offices and at homes. Microsoft Excel is an easy project management tool that allows the team members to easily see the tasks in a project, develop a plan, and track its progress. Before we learn more about project management in Excel, let's first have a look why do we use Excel. Microsoft Excel is an easy tool to plan a project. So it can be used by people who are beginners in terms of project management. In Excel, one can find several analytical tools like concatenate, len, and counter, so this makes data analysis easy and effective. As the entry of data is easy, same is tracking and controlling of project status. Then, there are several project management templates in Excel that help us to have an effective distribution of project data. We will be checking several project management templates towards the end of this video. Now, let's have a look at the process of making a Gantt chart in Excel. Before we begin this, it's important we know what is a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is like a horizontal bar chart that is used for project management. With the help of a Gantt chart, we can check the status of the task, the date they start, the date they end, and their dependencies on each other. Gantt chart helps in coordinating and monitoring different tasks in a project. Now, let's have a look at the steps that will help us in making a Gantt chart. First step we have is make a project table. We have several rows and columns. Like here, we have 3 columns. In the first column, we have the tasks. In the second, we have a start date. And in the third column, we have the duration or tenure of the task. The second step is to make a bar chart in Excel. For this, we will select the entire second column. Then we will go on the Insert tab and click on the bar graph chart. There, we can select stacked bar graph in 2D bar charts. As a result, we will have the entitled bar graph on the screen. In the third step, we will add the duration to the bar graph. We will right click on the chart, and in the menu that appears, we will select Select Data option. A window that appears on the screen. In that window, we will select Add option as shown. We can also see the start date is already in the entry section. Then in the dialog box that appears, type tenure in the series name and click on the range selection icon that's shown in the figure. Now select the relevant data from the tenure column and click on OK. Now we can see a bar graph that has 2 colors on the screen. This bar graph now has the duration of the tasks. The fourth step we have is adding description to the Gantt chart. Now we will open the box again, and in that box we will select the edit option as shown in the figure. Then we will select the tasks as we had selected the duration of the tasks before and click on OK. We can now see the tasks have appeared towards the left side of the Gantt chart. The fifth and the remarkable step will help us convert this bar graph into a Gantt chart. We will now click on the bars and select the Format Data Series option from the menu that appears. Then in the Format Data Series dialog box, we will select No Fill option. We can find our Gantt chart on the screen now in accordance with the data that we had entered. Now we can see the tasks on the left side are in the reverse order. So what we will do next is, we will click on the task panel, then go to the Format Access dialog box and select the categories in reverse order option. Now we can find the tasks in the right order. One more thing we can notice is Gantt chart is starting with some other date and not with the dates that we had entered. So for this, we will copy the first date in some other cell, then clicking on the copied cell, we will go to the home menu to select the dialog box as shown in the figure. Then in that drop down menu, we will select the number option. We can now find a value displayed in the copied cell. We will copy that value, click on the dates on the chart, and as the Format Access dialog box opens, we will paste that value in the box that says minimum shown in the figure. As a result, we will have our final Gantt chart on the screen. In the last step, we can give several designs to a Gantt chart, change colors, and make it more presentable for us. Now when we know the basic steps of making a Gantt chart, I will show that practically to you in Microsoft Excel. Our first step is to open Microsoft Excel, and in Microsoft Excel, we will make a project table. In a project table, we will have 3 columns. The first column will be task. The second column will have the start date. The third column will have tenure or the duration of the task. So beginning with tasks, we have task 1. In task 1, we have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Then comes task 2. In task 2, we have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4. Then we have task 3. In task 3, we will have 2 subsections, 3.1 and 3.2. Then we will start with the starting dates. In starting dates, we will put 1st January. The task 1.1 will be 1st of January. Then this will be 4th January. Let's say this is 5th January. Then we will put this as 11th of January. And this will be again 11th January only. This will be 15th January. Let's put this as 17th January. Let this be 19th January. Task 3 begins on 23rd January. And the 3.2 section begins at 26th of January. Now let's put the tenure or the duration of the task. We will begin with task 1. It takes 12 days. Then 1.1 takes 7 days. We say this takes 4 days and this takes 8 days. Then for task 2, it again takes 12 days. It takes 5 days, 5 days and let's say this takes 6 days and this takes 4 days. Then we come to task 3. This takes 8 days and let's say this takes 6 days and the 3.2 section takes 5 days. So this is how our project table is ready. In the second step, we will select the entire second column. After we have selected this column, we will go to the Insert tab. In the Insert tab, we'll go to the bar columns, and in this, we will select 2D stacked bar charts. Now we have the entitled bar chart in accordance to our data on the screen. Then comes the third step. We will add the duration of the tasks to the bar graph. We will click on the chart, and after we click on the chart, we will select Select Data option. In the Select Data Source dialog box, we find the start date is already there. Now we will click on Add, and after we click on Add, in the series name section, we will put tenure. Then in the series value, we will click on this icon and select the entire tenure series and click on OK. So this is the bar graph that we have now. This is now in two colors, the orange color and the blue color. This bar graph now has the duration of all the tasks in our project table. Now in the fourth step, now it's time for us to add description to our Gantt chart. Instead of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we will put task 1, task 2 and the subtasks. So what we will do is, we will again go to that box, we will left click on the Gantt chart, select the Select Data option, and then we'll go to the start date. Here, we'll select the Edit option. In the Edit option, we will select all the tasks and click on OK. Now we can see all the tasks are aligned towards the left of the bar chart. As we can see, this is a bar chart or a bar graph and not a Gantt chart. The next step we have is converting this bar graph into a Gantt chart. So we will click on the bars and select the Format Data Series option from the menu that appears. Here we have this Format Data Series option. Now we can see the dialog box on the screen. Here we'll go into the color section, fill section, and then we will select no fill. Now we can see the blue lines have disappeared. So this looks like a Gantt chart. So now when we have a Gantt chart on the screen, we can notice that the tasks here are in the reverse order. So what we will do is, we will click on these tasks and select the Format Axis option. Here, we will select Categories in reverse order. We can see our Gantt chart is now in order, like we have our task 1 on the top and task 3 at the bottom. The dates are starting from 11th of December, but the dates we have provided are from 1st of January. Now we will copy this cell, then go on the dates box. Here, we'll go to Format Axis. In the Format Axis, we can see minimum. In this minimum, we will paste this value and press enter. As we press enter, we can see our Gantt chart starting from the date that we wanted to start, and that too in the correct order, starting from task 1 to task 3. Now as a result, we have our final Gantt chart on the screen. In the last step, what we can do is make our Gantt chart more representable. We can change the color of these bars, we can give them shapes, and we can do many other things to make it more presentable. We will first select the bars. Like what we will do is, we will select task 1 and let's say we give it the color blue. Then task 2, we will give it color green, and in task 3, we'll give it the color black. So here the subsections will give different colors to the subsections as well. Then we come to task 2.1. This is how we can change the color of these cells, or apart from changing colors, we can select a bar graph and do the gradient fill. So this is how we can make a Gantt chart more presentable. After changing the colors or changing the shapes, we have our final Gantt chart on the screen. Finally, let's have a look at some Microsoft Excel templates for project management. Microsoft Excel templates help in collecting data, putting them into order, and check their dependencies with each other. With the help of these templates, we can monitor the status of the tasks, and we can also check the progress our project has made. Moving forth, we will check some important Microsoft Excel templates. The first template we have is Excel Project Review template. This template helps us have an overview of the project. We can have a clear understanding of all the tasks that are planned and that are completed. This helps project managers to measure the progress of the project and take further steps accordingly. Second template we will check is Excel Budget template. In this template, we can monitor all the expenditures of our project. It helps us in managing the budget of a project and also helps in comparing the budget of a project at different phases. Let's have a look at the budget template in Excel once. We can download this template from officetimeline.com. The Gantt chart towards the right is in accordance with the dates towards the left. If we fluctuate the date, we can see the template working. The start date for task 1 could be changed to 10th June. If we change this date to 10 June, we can see the fluctuation in the Gantt chart. So this is how we can use this template directly. Let's have a look at the third template now. Third template we will see is Excel Sprint Project Tracker template. This template is used majorly in agile projects, where the project is made in several sprints or sessions. This template includes the start date, the end date, and the duration of each task. We can also see the percentage completed of each task. Let's have a look at the Sprint Project Tracker template as well. We can see the Gantt chart towards the right and the data towards the left. So if we change any data, we can see the Gantt chart changing. For example, we can change the data in Sprint 2 Feature 3. Let's change the start date to July 2nd. We can see the Gantt chart changing. This is how we can use this template directly to track our sessions. Let's have a look at the fourth Excel template. This template is Excel Project Tracker. In this template, we have the data of all the tasks with their status and owners. We can track the percentage of tasks completed and also compare the planned duration of the task to the actual duration of the task. After the critical path tracker, let's check the Excel Project Schedule template. This template helps in effective management of the project as it helps in monitoring the time that each task of the project takes. It provides a clear view of all the work associated with the project. Let's have a look at this template in Excel once. We can see the Gantt chart in accordance to the data. If we change the estimated hours at two places, let's say at the design review, we make it 15 hours instead of 5 hours. And at the create staffing plan, we make it 2 hours instead of 20 hours. We can see the Gantt chart fluctuating. This is how we can use this template to manage the schedule in a project. Moving forward, the next template we will see is Excel Project Status Report template. This template helps us having a list of project deliverables and the risks associated with that project. This template helps the project managers about different crucial activities involved in a project. After this, we have Excel Milestone Tracker. The Milestone Tracker helps us in tracking or monitoring different tasks in a project. Project managers use this template to monitor the project performance with respect to the timelines. The last template we will see is Excel Project Planner. Excel Project Planner includes a list of tasks with the respected owners along with the start date and the end date of that task. This helps in monitoring each task and comparing the estimated task date with the actual ones. Let's have a look at this template in Excel. We can see the Gantt chart with respect to the data entered. Let's make changes at several places in the data. We can make this 22 to 24. We will make this 23 go to 2. And we can make this 5th September go to 15th September. And when we make the changes, we can realize the Gantt chart is fluctuating. So this is how we can use this template to plan a project effectively and efficiently.
In this lesson, we will focus on project time management. Let us begin with the objectives of this lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to define project time management, explain project schedule, Gantt charts and network diagrams, identify the key terms used in project time management, describe the project time management processes, explain various schedule network analysis techniques. In the next screen, let us take a quick look at the project management process map. There are 47 processes in project management grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the third knowledge area, that is, project time management and its processes. Let us begin with the first topic of this lesson, project time management. The purpose of project time management is to ensure that the projects get completed on time. This knowledge area is primarily concerned with developing a project schedule and ensuring that project goes as per the agreed schedule. If there is a need to change the project schedule, the change should happen by following a proper change control procedure. Another term used in the PMP examination is Schedule Management Plan. Schedule Management Plan is part of the Project Management Plan and has information on the planned project schedule and its management and control. Let us discuss the key activities of project time management in the next screen. The key activities that are part of the project time management include identifying activities, estimating time and resources, and sequencing activities. It is important to identify a list of activities that would be a part of the project. Next, An estimation of time and resources required for completing the identified activities are done. Finally, these activities need to be sequenced as per the dependencies. In the next screen, let us discuss project schedule. Project schedule represents the time dimension of the project plan and has information like when the project would start, when each of the project activities would happen, in what order the project activities would happen, when project would be completed, etc. Usually, software system is used to develop the project schedule. The project team can enter the list of activities in the software, as well as their dependencies, and the software can produce the project schedule as the output. Microsoft Project is the most popular tool used for project schedule development. Generally, project schedule is considered similar to project management plan. Project management plan is different from project schedule. Project management plan not only has information about the project schedule, but also other important project-related plans, like risk management plan, cost management plan, etc. Let us focus on Gantt chart in the next screen. Gantt chart is a type of bar chart that illustrates a project schedule. It shows the dependencies between the project activities as well as their percent completion. A sample Gantt chart is shown on the screen. Two summary elements of the work breakdown structure are depicted. To complete those elements, there are a number of activities under them. Some of these activities have dependencies. For example, Activity B and C have a dependency. Activity C can start only when Activity B is completed. The chart gives you an idea about when specific activities are planned to finish and when the overall WBS element will get delivered. Create tasks and work with the Gantt chart. This will make answering Gantt chart-based questions easy and fun. In the next screen, let us understand the relationships that exist among project activities. Network diagram is extensively used in the project time management knowledge area to plot the activity dependencies. This is a graphical representation of the project activities in the form of a network. There are two ways to draw a network diagram. In Precedence Diagramming Model, PDM, or Activity on Node, AON, boxes represent activities and the arrows indicate the dependency. This type of network can have all four types of relationships between the activities. In Arrow Diagramming Model, ADM, or Activity on Arrow, AOA, the arrows represent activities. The relationships and sequences can be inferred from the direction of the arrows and linkages between the activities. In such types of network, only finish-to-start relationships can be shown. Such diagrams may need to make use of dummy activities to indicate some dependency between the activities. There may be questions in the PMP exam based on the network diagram, so create and work with the diagram. This will make answering network diagram-based questions easy and fun. In the next screen, let us look at a network diagram. A sample network diagram is shown on the screen. Activities A and C can happen in parallel. B and D require both A and C to complete, whereas E requires both B and D to complete. Activity on Arrow network diagram makes use of hammock activities. They are used to show a comprehensive summary activity combining several other activities underneath for control and reporting purposes. In the next screen, let us look at a few important terms in time management. When a successor activity can start before the predecessor activity can complete, it is considered lead. For example, you can start preparing the test environment 2 weeks before the development activity finishes. When the successor activity has to wait for a few days after the predecessor activity has been completed, it is considered lag. For example, one needs to wait for 2 days for the foundation to settle before work on the pillars for the next floor starts. Rolling wave planning is an iterative planning technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term is planned in detail, while the work in the future is planned at a higher level. It is a form of progressive elaboration. In the context of estimating techniques, analogous estimating is based on the previous project data. Therefore, if the last 5 similar projects took 6 months to complete, the next one will also take 6 months. This technique employs expert judgment. Another estimating technique is parametric estimating. This technique uses a mathematical model to calculate projected time for an activity based on the historical records from previous projects and other information. A few common parameters are identified based on the previous project data, and that parameter is used to predict the time required to complete the next activity or project. For example, you can normally complete 10 kilometers of highway construction lanes a week. Effort is the total amount of work required to complete the activity. Duration is the amount of time it takes in terms of elapsed or calendar days. If you have an activity that requires 10 people to work for 5 days, the total effort is 50 person days, but the duration is only 5 days. In the next screen, let us look at the project time management processes. There are 7 project time management processes. They are plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity resources, estimate activity durations, develop schedule, and control schedule. The first 6 processes are executed during the planning process group. The ultimate goal of these planning processes is to develop the project schedule. The 7th and the last process is a part of the monitoring and controlling process group. In the next few screens, let us discuss these processes in detail. We will begin with plan schedule management. As defined in PMBOK Guide, plan schedule management is the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling the project schedule. It belongs to the planning process group. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The project management plan provides other subsidiary plans and will guide the schedule planning activities on the project. The project charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which might help determine the approach for schedule management. Few projects might have scheduling constraint. For example, projects of Olympics 2016 should be completed at the same time. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure like scheduling systems available, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, templates, past performance data and estimates, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Experts can draw from their previous experiences the proper approach to govern the schedule on a project. Meetings may be organized to determine the schedule management plan. Anybody responsible for the project schedule management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Several analytical techniques may be used to determine the schedule management plan. These may include different planning approaches and philosophies, such as rolling wave planning, or different scheduling software that allowed to build what-if scenarios, and study the effect of advanced scheduling techniques like leveling, fast tracking, and crashing. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. Schedule management plan is a component of the project management plan that describes the criteria and activities required to arrive at the project schedule, as well as how the project may be baselined, monitored, and controlled. In the next screen, let us define activities process. Define activities is the process of identifying the specific actions to be performed to produce the project deliverables. It belongs to the planning process group. The important input for the define activities process is the scope baseline. Scope baseline is a term used collectively to refer to project deliverables, constraints, and assumptions of the project. In addition to the scope baseline, the other inputs in this process are enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets, and schedule management plan. A reason why enterprise environmental factors is an input to define activities is because the organization might be using project management software to define activities, and that may influence the activity definition process. The knowledge base containing historical information regarding activities lists used by previous similar projects is a good example of organization process assets applied to scheduling. The tools and techniques used in defining activities are decomposition and rolling wave planning. The last technique is expert judgment, where the experience of project team members is used in developing detailed activity lists. The output of the process is activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list. Activity list contains a list of identified activities. Activity attributes are the additional information about the activity itself. A milestone is a significant point or event in the project. A milestone list identifies all the milestones and indicates whether the milestone is mandatory or optional. Let us move on to the next process, sequence activities. Sequence activities is the process of identifying and documenting relationships among the project activities and is also part of the planning process group. For every activity and milestone, except the first and last one, is connected to or at least one predecessor and one successor. The inputs to this process are activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list. All these are the outputs of the define activity process. The other inputs are schedule management plan and project scope statement. Schedule management plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. Organization process assets are also an input to sequencing activities because the organization might have some kind of knowledge base for scheduling project activities. The enterprise environmental factors relevant to this process may be scheduling tools in use, project management information systems, work authorization systems, etc. One of the important tools and techniques used in sequencing activities is the precedence diagramming method. In this method, the activities are drawn on a network diagram and all the different kinds of dependencies between the activities are determined. While determining activity dependency, it is important to identify the type of relationship or dependency between the activities. The other technique is leads and lag, which is widely used for sequencing activities. The output of the process is the project schedule network diagram, which is a graphical representation of the project activities in a form of network, which also shows the activity dependencies. While designing the network diagram, new activities might be identified, and that would result in some of the project document updates, especially the ones that list all the project activities. In the next screen, let us look at the estimate activity resources process. After sequencing the activities, the next step in project time management is estimating the resources required to accomplish each of the identified activities. Estimate activity resources process also belongs to the planning process group. Here, resources do not mean only the human resources, but includes all other resources like equipment, raw materials, machinery, etc. Schedule management plan is the first input. Schedule management plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. The other inputs to this process are an activity list and activity attributes that are the outputs of the time management processes. Risk register is another input. Risks to the project may influence the decisions about the resources that need to be deployed. Hence, risk register becomes an input to this project. In addition, Activity cost estimates are another input. Cost and resource estimates on a project are interrelated and influence each other. For example, the cost might dictate the number and type of resources that can be employed, or the time might dictate the cost that may need to be incurred. Along with this, the resource calendar is also an important input because it has the information about the availability of each of the resources. Some of the enterprise environmental factors that can influence estimating activity resources are availability of required resources within the organization. The organizational process assets is also an important input, as the organization might have standard policies for staffing or for hiring contractors on the project. With all these inputs available for estimating activity resources, there are various techniques used for estimating the required resources. The first technique is using expert judgment. In this technique, an expert in resource planning and estimating can estimate each of the activities. The next technique used is alternative analysis. In this, the activities are analyzed to identify different ways of completing them. This is to ensure only the required resources are assigned to each of the activities. This helps in resource optimization. Along with the two techniques, many organizations routinely publish their estimating data, and this could be used in activity resource estimation. Another technique that is routinely used in activity estimation is bottom-up estimating, which is decomposing the activity further down to understand it in more detail and estimating at that level. Later, all such estimates are added to arrive at the estimate of the activity. In real projects, one has to use all to estimate each of the activities. Sometimes, the project management software also helps in estimating. The software estimates are based on the inputs provided to it. Software should only be considered as a supporting tool in estimation and never fully rely on its output. Clearly, the output of this process is the activity resource requirements. Along with this, resource breakdown structure is also prepared. The resource breakdown structure is the categorization of all the required resources in various categories. That is, human resources, equipment, raw materials, etc. In the process of estimation, several other project documents may also be updated. For example, the resource estimates are directly correlated with cost estimates. Let us now move on to the next process, estimate activity durations. The next process is to estimate the duration required to complete each of the activities. The duration estimation should be done by someone who is familiar with the project. For example, the same activity, if done by a high-skilled resource, would take less time compared to a less skilled resource. This may vary regardless of the resource used due to the project requirements. In addition, the activity duration estimation should be updated continuously as you move ahead with the project, because as the project progresses, there will be more clarity on the project. The inputs of this process are similar to the ones in sequence activities process. Schedule management plan is the first input. Schedule management plan provides guidance in terms of methodology to be employed for many of the scheduling activities on the project. For instance, it may contain information about the estimation techniques to be employed and the people who need to be involved in the estimation process. Activity resource requirements is also an input to this process because resources assigned to an activity would significantly affect the activity duration. That is, the lower-skilled resources would take more time than the high-skilled resources. The other inputs include activity list, activity attributes, and resource breakdown structure. Resource calendars are also an input to this process. The type and skill set of resources available to the team may have an impact on the time it would take to complete the activities. Risks to the project may influence the decisions about the time required to complete the activity. Hence, risk register becomes an input to this process. The project scope statement defines the constraints and assumptions affecting the project duration. An example of enterprise environmental factor that can affect duration is organization's productivity metrics, which is collected based on the experiences from multiple projects. The last input in this process is organizational process assets. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques used for estimating activity durations. First is the expert judgment, which means using previous project experiences in estimating the current project duration. This can be used with other estimation techniques and used to reconcile differences if different techniques result in different estimates. Three-point estimating is a method where 3 estimates are used instead of 1. It is part of a project management philosophy known as Program Evaluation and Review Technique, PERT. Estimating activity durations is often done as a team exercise, as each activity may require multiple skill sets to be applied. Therefore, it is important to use group decision-making techniques to arrive at a consensus, or at least an estimate that is acceptable to all the team members. Reserve analysis adds buffer into the project schedule to deal with any uncertainty. The contingency reserve may be added as a percentage of the activity duration or fixed number of work periods. The other tools and techniques are analogous estimating and parametric estimating. The outputs of this process are the activity duration estimates and project documents updates. The activity duration estimates is represented in terms of the range of possible results. For example, 10 days plus minus 2 days, that is, the activity would take minimum 8 days and maximum 12 days. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Develop schedule is the process of analyzing activity sequences, durations, resource requirements, and schedule constraints to create the project schedule. It belongs to the planning process group. Generally, scheduling software is used for developing the project schedule. Entering the activities, durations, and resources into a scheduling tool generates a schedule with planned dates for completing project activities. Developing a project schedule is an iterative process. Revising and maintaining a realistic schedule is a task in itself, and it continues throughout the project as the work progresses. The most of the inputs of this process are the outputs of estimate activity durations process. They are risk register, project scope statement, project staff assignments, resources calendars, organizational process assets, enterprise environmental factors, schedule management plan, activity list, activity attributes, project schedule network diagrams, activity resource requirements, resource breakdown structure, and activity duration estimates. Various tools and techniques are used to develop schedule process. Schedule network analysis is a technique that generates project schedule. It employs various analytical techniques such as critical path method, critical chain method, modeling techniques, and resource optimization techniques to create the project schedule. The other tools and techniques include leads and lags, schedule compression, and scheduling tool. Let us now look at the outputs of this process. The project schedule consists of a minimum planned start date and planned finish date for each activity. Although project schedule can be represented in tabular format, it is more often represented graphically using either bar charts or network diagrams, or a combination of the two. The final schedule, which is the output of the developed schedule process, is also called schedule baseline. Once the schedule is baselined, it can be changed only through formal approvals. Meeting the schedule baseline is one of the measures of project success. Schedule data produced may include number of resources, key milestones, etc. Project calendars specify the available working days and the number of shifts in each day. It indicates how many hours and days are available for the work of the project to be completed. Project Management Plan updates are a result of the develop schedule process. Many of the other subsidiary plans of the project plan may get impacted, which may include Cost Management Plan, Scope Management Plan, Risk Management Plan, etc. This may also result in other project documents being updated. In the next few screens, let us discuss schedule network analysis techniques. It is essential to know if the required resources are available at that time, along with the time estimate of each of the activities. Since schedule is calendar-based, it helps in estimating the same. Schedule network analysis technique generates project schedule. There are various schedule network techniques. Critical path method relies on determining the critical path on a project schedule. Critical chain method is a variant of the critical path method, wherein the critical chain is determined based on the logical, resource, and other kinds of dependencies between the activities. What-if scenario analysis is about trying to vary a certain parameter to observe the impact on the schedule. For instance, you may want to check result if you put in more resources on a particular activity to reduce its duration. Resource optimization techniques try to arrive at the optimal utilization of the resources used on a project. Ideally, you would want the resources to be fully utilized, but you would also want to build in sufficient buffers in case a certain resource is not available due to various reasons. In the next screen, let us look at the Program Evaluation and Review technique. Program Evaluation and Review technique is based on 3-point estimates for an activity. The pessimistic estimate refers to the worst-case scenario, whereas most likely estimate is what you expect to happen in a realistic scenario. The optimistic estimate, on the other hand, represents the amount of time an activity would take in the best-case scenario. Based on these three estimates, the expected duration of the estimate is calculated as per the formula given on the screen. The formula for calculating standard deviation of an activity and variance of an activity is also given. There is no question asked on variance, but the formula is important because if the standard deviation of the whole project is to be calculated, the process is to calculate the variance of the whole project and then take its square root to calculate the standard deviation of the project. Concept-based questions on PERT can be expected in the PMP exam, so make a note of the formulae while you prepare for the exam. In the next screen, let us understand PERT with an example. Let us now figure out how we can apply the 3-point estimation that PERT uses in order to draw some useful conclusions. Assume that the optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely estimates are 20, 70, and 30 respectively. Using these values, you can determine the expected duration and the standard deviation as indicated. Now, if the causes of variation are random, you can assume that the actual values would be evenly distributed about the mean and will follow the normal distribution, sometimes referred to as the bell curve. Further, you can use the properties of the normal distribution. There is a 68% probability of the actual value falling within first sigma from the mean, 95.4% probability for the second sigma, and 99.7% probability of the actual value falling within third sigma. Extending this logic, the notion of 6 sigma is reaching a level of confidence that only 3.4 times out of a million would the actual value fall outside the stated range. PERT allows you to plan based on the intended level of confidence in the outcome and determine buffers accordingly. Let us discuss the critical path method in the next screen. Critical path is defined as the longest duration path through a network diagram, which determines the shortest time to complete the project. Float can be considered as a buffer time available to complete an activity. Float is calculated once the network diagram is ready. It is also called as slack. There are 3 kinds of float. The first being the total float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the project end date or an intermediary milestone. The second type of float is free float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the early start date of its successor or successors' activities. The last type is independent float, which is the amount of time an activity can be delayed if all the predecessors finish at their latest finish dates and you want to start all the immediate successors at their earliest start dates. The slack of the activities on the critical path is 0, because there is no scope to delay activities on the critical path. Critical path actually represents the project duration. Delaying activities on the critical path is as good as delaying the project duration. Concept-based questions on critical path can be expected in the exam, so it is essential to have a clear understanding of the concept. In the next screen, let us learn how to calculate float. Float of an activity can be calculated by 2 methods. However, the first step in critical path method is to identify the critical path of the network. Once the critical path is identified, follow the forward pass to find early start and early finish for each activity. The float of the activities on the critical path is 0, so they represent the overall project duration. Use forward pass or backward pass to calculate the total activity time. Calculate late finish and late start using backward pass method. Note the total float formula before you start for the exam. In the next screen, let us look at forward pass and backward pass methods in detail. In forward pass, you can either go through the network starting with time 0 and keep calculating the time required to complete each of the activities until you reach the last activity of the project. The starting time for each of the activity in this approach is called early start, and the end time for each activity is called the early finish. Alternatively, in backward pass, you can travel through the network from the project end date and calculate the time required to complete each activity. The end date in this approach is called the late finish, and the start date of the activity in this approach is called the late start. The float of the activity is either the difference between the late start and early start, or the difference between the late finish and early finish. Both the differences work out to be the same. Before the start of the PMP exam, please make a note of the total float formula. Let us understand the critical path calculation with an example in the next screen. Let us look at an example for critical path. There are 5 activities in this project and 2 paths in the network diagram. Start 1, 2, 4, 5, end is one path, and start 1, 3, 5, end is the second path. Since the duration of the path start 1, 2, 4, 5, end is 18 days, which is more than the duration of the path start 1, 3, 5, end, the critical path of the project is start 1, 2, 4, 5, end. Let us take activity 3 as an example. First, calculate the early start and early finish dates. Activity 3 can start only after activity 1. Since the early finish of activity 1 is 3, it becomes the early start of activity 3. Activity 3 cannot start earlier than 3 because activity 1 can be completed only by then. Therefore, early start of activity 3 is 3, since the duration of the activity is 4 days. The early finish of activity 3 is 3 plus 4 equals 7 days. Now, let us calculate the late start and late finish of activity 3. Late start of activity 5 is 14 days. The activity 3 happens just before activity 5. So the late finish of activity 3 is 14 days. To calculate the late start, you can subtract the duration from late finish. Therefore, the late start of activity 3 is 14 minus 4 equals 10. In the next screen, let us focus on schedule compression. Look at the 4 activities in the table. The normal cost of executing each of the activities, as well as how much each of the activities can be crashed, is also provided. Which activity would you crash to reduce the project time by 1 day? Activity A will be crashed if the duration of the project is reduced by 1 day, as the per unit cost of crashing the activity A is the least. All the activities are assumed to be on the critical path here. While crashing, if you end up saving time on a path, which is not the critical path, you will not end up saving time on the project. In the next screen, let us look into the impact of schedule compression. Different schedule compression techniques have different impact on the project. The impact of fast track leads to risk additions and increase in management time for the project manager. Crash leads to cost addition and increase in management time for the project manager. Reduced scope, on the other hand, saves cost and resources but increases customer dissatisfaction. Likewise, cut quality saves cost and resources but increases risk. Resource reallocation does not add cost or increase risk. In the next screen, let us look into the other techniques used in scheduling. There are several techniques that are used in scheduling projects. What-if scenario analysis. In this technique, questions like, what if a particular scenario changed on the project? Would that produce a shorter schedule? Are put forth to understand the impact of specific changes on the schedule. The goal is to produce a realistic schedule. Monte Carlo analysis. In this method, a computer simulates the outcomes of a project, making use of randomly generated values that map the probability distribution of the input variables. Together, these two techniques are called modeling techniques. Resource optimization techniques. These are also used to produce a resource-limited schedule. Resource optimization results in more stable number of resources used in the project. Critical chain method. This technique develops the project schedule that takes into account both the activity and resource dependencies. In the next screen, let us look at the last process in project time management, control schedule. Control schedule is concerned with determining the status of the project schedule, determining that the project schedule has changed, and managing the actual changes as they occur. The project schedule is an important input to this process. It is the actual schedule that needs to be controlled. Schedule data contains information related to the schedule that may need to be monitored in order to take actions to bring the project back on schedule. Project calendar describes the working hours and days for the project. Work performance data has information like which activities have started, their progress, and which activities have finished. The other inputs of this process are project management plan and organizational process assets. The key tools and techniques of this process are the performance reviews. Performance review is measuring, comparing, and analyzing schedule performance such as actual start and finish dates, percent complete, and remaining duration for work in progress. The other tools and techniques include resource optimization techniques, modeling techniques, schedule compression, leads and lags, scheduling tool, and project management software. In development schedule process, these techniques are used for the first time to develop the project schedule, whereas in control schedule process, these techniques are used to update the project schedule. The key output of the control schedule process is the work performance information. This is represented in the form of schedule variance, SV, and schedule performance index, SPI. As a part of the control schedule process, the project team will generate forecasts, likely schedule for forthcoming activities, and project as a whole. The other outputs include organizational process assets updates, change requests, project management plan updates, and project document updates. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Here is a quick recap of what was covered in this lesson. Project time management includes the processes required to manage the timely completion of the project. A project schedule defines the start and end dates of the project and the project activities. These activities are assigned a duration and sequenced in a logical order. Gantt charts and network diagrams are used to identify project activities and determine the relationships and dependencies between them. Gantt chart displays the start and end dates of project activities, the overall project schedule, and the logical task relationships, while network diagram is used to plot the activity dependencies. Plan schedule management define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity resources, estimate activity durations, develop schedule and control schedule are the 7 processes under project time management. Schedule network analysis technique generates project schedule based on the estimates of time and resource requirements. In this lesson, we will focus on project cost management. Let us begin with the objectives of this lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to define project cost management, differentiate between cost estimation and cost budgeting, explain control accounts, describe the project cost management processes, apply earned value management technique to track project performance, identify key terminologies used in project cost management. In the next screen, let us take a quick look at the project management process map. There are 47 processes in project management grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the 4th knowledge area, that is, project cost management and its processes. In the next screen, let us understand the concept of project cost management. Project cost management involves activities like estimating the cost of each of the project activities, adding the cost estimates of the related activities to arrive at the cost budget, and controlling the cost to ensure that project activities are completed within the defined budget. In the next screen, let us discuss Cost Management Plan. The Cost Management Plan is a vital step in project cost management. It contains information like planning the project cost, managing and controlling the project in relation to the cost baseline, and managing cost variances. Project Cost Management Plan is a part of the Project Management Plan. The methods used in estimating the cost of each of the project activities are similar to the ones used in estimating project time. For example, time estimation methods like expert judgment, analogous estimating, bottom-up estimating, and reserve analysis are few of the techniques that are also used in estimating activity cost. Let us discuss control account in the next screen. Control account is an important concept in the project cost management. Project cost is generally estimated at individual activity level. It becomes difficult to manage cost at the activity level in large projects. Therefore, the cost is managed at a higher level. This requires related activities to be clubbed and their cost being managed together as one unit. This unit is called control account. While estimating the project time, WBS is created to break down the project into smaller deliverables. These deliverables are broken down into work packages, and these work packages are in turn broken into activities. Control account is defined at a level higher than the work packages. For example, if 5 work packages are part of the one control account, the cost of all activities belonging to these 5 work packages are managed as one unit. In the next screen, let us discuss the project cost management process. Project cost management has 4 processes. They are plan cost management, estimate costs, determine budget, and control costs. The 3 processes, plan cost management, estimate costs, and determine budget, are a part of planning process group, and control cost process is a part of monitoring and controlling process group. Let us look at each of these processes in detail. Let us begin with the first process, that is, plan cost management, in the next screen. Managing costs on a project is a critical exercise. If the activities are planned well, it becomes easier to achieve harmony with the overall cost and budget of the project. Plan cost management is the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, managing, expending, and controlling the project costs. Let us look at the inputs required for this process. The Project Management Plan provides other subsidiary plans and guides the cost planning activities on the project. The Project Charter provides an overall context and high-level product and project description, which help determine the approach for cost management. For example, for some projects, budget could be a constraint, whereas for others, budget would not be a constraint, but subject to the other objectives. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization and the infrastructure, for instance, the scheduling systems available, the key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, templates, past performance, data and estimates, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Experts can devise an approach to govern the costs on a project by using their previous experiences. Meetings may be organized to determine the cost management plan. Everyone responsible for the project schedule management, such as the project manager, representatives from the appropriate accounting or financial organization, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders must attend these meetings. Several analytical techniques may be used to determine the cost management plan. These techniques help to map the impact of various decisions on cost. For example, how do risk management processes impact cost, etc. Cost management plan is the primary output of this process. It establishes the units of measure, levels of precision, organizational process links, control accounts to be used, rules for performance measurement and reporting, frequency and methodology of monitoring the costs, and various other details that lay the overall framework for cost management on a project. In the next screen, let us discuss the second process under project cost management. Estimate cost. Estimate cost is the approximation of the monetary resources required to complete a project activity. Cost of a specific activity is estimated based on the information available at that point of time. As the project team gets more information about the project, the activity cost estimation may change. Let us look at the inputs of this process. Scope baseline is the most important input as it details out the project scope of work. Along with that, project schedule is also important. This contains information like when and which resource is required for the project. It is good to remember that the same kind of resources may have different costs at different points of time. Human Resource Management Plan is another important input. Various elements like personnel rates, rewards or recognition programs, etc., are covered in the Human Resource Management Plan, which is important in approximating the cost estimate. Human Resource Management Plan will be discussed in detail in the Human Resource Management Knowledge area. Risk Register is also an input because risk mitigation costs should be considered in cost planning. More information on risk and its effect in the project will be looked at in detail in Risk Management Knowledge area. Another input, Enterprise Environmental Factors, provides organizational context to the project. Organization Process Asset is listed as an input as organizations might have standards set of cost estimation policies or templates. Cost Management Plan is another important input. The Cost Management Plan lays the framework for the cost management processes in the project. It provides guidelines such as the units of measure, accuracy desired, methodologies, and tools to be used, etc. Let us now look at the tools and techniques used in this process. Expert judgment, reserve analysis, analogous estimating, cost of quality, parametric estimating, project management software, bottom-up estimating, three-point estimating, vendor bid analysis, and group decision-making are the various tools and techniques used in this process. Most of the tools and techniques used here are similar to the ones used in the time management knowledge area. Vendor bid analysis is a technique used to estimate project cost. For example,